gonna die. Going too fast. I'm taking 3.
I'm going for the St. Louis now.
Oh no!
Son of a bitch.
You get your 2?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course, and today we are going to take a look at a replay in the Hindenburg. Now, I'm in the Hindenburg, but there are some familiar faces on my team as well. The Division A is Tercep and Mountain Man Dan, both members of NGA. This was just coincidental. I think I had just jumped into the channel, and maybe they were in a different channel, so they obviously, just selected battle at the same time I did. I wanted to take out the Hindenburg because the Hindenburg's amazing, and this battle turned out decently. I mean, there was no, on my behalf, it wasn't, anything spectacular from myself, but the team did very, very well, particularly as well, Tercep and Mountain Man Dan. They did great job. They're both in destroyers, and, yeah, we'll see how this unfolds. So, I mean, my original sort of thinking, because it does look like the team is going to head to C. Now, I don't really want to head to C. I don't like going too far down there to C on this map. There's just not a whole lot of cover, and the Hindenburg has really high detection, so she can get seen. Basically, as soon as I open up my guns, I'm going to get spotted, so I need to be prepared for this as well. So, yeah, I was on the fence about going down here, but if we do look at where my team is kind of, going at this point in time, it does look like we might be focusing A and B. So that would be great, because it'll essentially just let me do a big circle in and around, in and behind a lot of my allies, and that way, won't really have to worry about getting seen first off the bat, because don't want that to happen. Plus, you're in a Hindenburg. Hindenburg is capable of dishing out a whole crap ton of damage from very, very far away. So usually when people see the Hindenburg, they want it to go down as quick as possible. And I don't blame them, frankly. It makes sense that you would want to kill the Hindenburg as quick as possible. So taking a look at the minimap here, we do see that, yeah, a lot of my team is kind of concentrated A and B. We're kind of slow to get going here as well, which is sort of unfortunate. Now, I mean, I'm in a Hindenburg. I can't just, this early in the battle, I cannot just push forward and attempt to get into a cap and start capping it out. It's just not going to happen. It really is up to some of the destroyer captains, maybe some of the cruisers that have better concealment than I, to get in there a little closer to, provide better close-in support to the destroyers who are hopefully capping the zones. But keep in mind, too, that even though the enemy team, say maybe the enemy team does come in and take the cap take all 3 caps right away, right? That is not the end of the world. You still do have the option of killing enemy ships, assuming your team is in, relatively good position to do so. So it's not the end of the world, especially at the beginning of the battle like this. Things can develop quickly, and as long as you and your team is positioned properly, usually you can take advantage of those developments as they come your way, right? So that's essentially what we are going to try and do in this battle here, at least what I'm going to try and do so far, right? You can see I am duking it out with, I think it's another enemy Hindenburg there off in the distance. We have some torpedoes coming in. I do believe those are Shimakaze torpedoes, so we do want to be careful as well. We have this poor New Orleans. I mean, you can see exactly that New Orleans paid the price, right, for moving in too far, or moving in quickly, way too soon, and then for whatever reason the player decides that he can go bow on and absorb damage, which doesn't really work. We also have an Thotgor there off in the distance that we're putting shots into as well. Hopefully we'll get a few citadels on that player, maybe even take the player down. There's one citadel. Yeah, no, still has a bit of health, but I'm not going to be able to focus too much on that Thotgor there off in the distance. I am going to have to, help support my team over here at B. Now, the team, yeah, at this point in time, we are not in good positions, right? We can see as well, people are clicking on the map, we're all bunched up here. What are we doing, essentially, is what's going through a lot of people's minds. And the enemy does have all 3 caps. But again, it's not the end of the world. Even though we are all bunched up, we are, starting to spread out here a little and get some good positioning going on as well. Tursip and Mountain Man Dan are going to be putting some pressure on the A zone to start capping A. In the meantime, I'm going to be staying down here at B, helping support my battleships down here at B. Switched over to my high explosive, right? I've got a lot of battleships off in the distance, all giving me bow on target, so yeah, we're going to need to set these players on fire here as well. If, because one of the great things about the German cruisers is, well, I guess the Rune and the Hindenburg, is they really reload very, very quickly. So you do definitely have the option of, switching your ammo types over, often enough, taking advantage of situations, especially when, you do come across an enemy cruiser who's giving you a broadside, or if you have a battleship who's pretty close in, giving you a broadside as well, your armor piercing will do a whole crap ton of damage to that player. We see another enemy ship there off in the distance, the Hindenburg once again, so we do want to be careful with this Hindenburg. Much like I'm a huge threat, we can see the Hindenburg just landed a number of nice shots on me. The Hindenburg is, also a huge threat, just like that player out there. We need to keep the player in mind and hopefully not take too much damage. We can see the enemy Thotgor there off in the distance. I think it's a Thotgor actually, because, it doesn't have any camo on it. And I've heard, I don't have the Thotgor yet myself. I actually will take out the Thotgor in player, because I never had the Thotgor and never played the Thotgor, but I've heard that the Thotgor is not as good as an Thotgor, and that actually kind of makes sense to me and makes me happy, because you do have to pay money to get yourself an Thotgor. It would be kind of cheap if you had to pay money for the Thotgor and then later they gave basically the same ship out for free. That would kind of suck, but whatever. Putting shots in on the enemy New Orleans there off in the distance, hoping to get the kill, but we do see that Tursip is all over that with his torpedoes and manages to take out the enemy New Orleans, so fantastic. We don't have to worry about that player anymore, and instead can focus once again on some of these enemy ships here off in the distance. We can see the battleships and the Hindenburg still duking it out with that enemy Hindenburg. I didn't want to let the player go unchecked, right? Always trying to rain shells down in on the player as well from a distance whenever I see the player. That's very important, just to make sure that the Hindenburg isn't able to just sort of line up on one particular player of mine or ally of mine and really start focusing that player down, because a Hindenburg can do that fairly quickly, and you do want to make sure that you're always aware of where the Hindenburgs are on the map. Anyway, putting shots into the Hindenburg, you can see that we've grouped up with some of my allies here. Tursip and Mountain Man Dan, they have now taken the A point. In fact, they really saved us at this point in time, and you can see one of my friendly cruisers is actually in the B zone starting to cap that as well, so excellent. I'm going to try and get myself closer into B now so they can provide more support to B. We really do need to take this point. It's gone on long enough where the enemy has had the cap advantage. We need to make the play now. We can see Tursip up there at A managed to take out another enemy destroyer, so that is fantastic. One more player we do not have to worry about, and we can see some decent damage being dealt to that enemy battleship. So we're going to switch back over to the enemy Hindenburg, because the Hindenburg's back up once again. Switching back over to the armor piercing as well, because I do kind of have a bit of a broadside there on that enemy Hindenburg, so maybe I can land a few shots. Hindenburg is turning out, but the Yamato comes back into play once again. Now, the Yamato is at a close enough range and giving me a broadside that my armor piercing should be able to go in there and do a decent amount of damage to the enemy Yamato. Now, unfortunately, we don't get to see the damage I do. The enemy Yamato pops out of sight, but whatever. I think it'll come up once again. There's the Yamato, and we can see the Hindenburg off in the distance. Now, I am going to focus the Yamato. The Yamato's closer, giving me a better angle than the Hindenburg. The Hindenburg keeps popping in and out of sight and is maneuvering off in the distance, so it's going to be a whole lot harder to actually be able to land any shells. We can see some shots go into the Yamato. Does a bit of damage, not as much as I was hoping, obviously, but I do need to get myself into this B cap zone and start capping it. Very important that I get in here and do something about the enemies, right? Switching over to our high explosive, because the Yamato's not giving me a great angle anymore, so we may as well try and get some fire set to the player. I don't have any other broadside cruisers off in the distance, so yeah, high explosive it is. And we are going to continue to just steam straight into B, hoping to be able to get in here, help on the cap, and help defend the point as well. Now you see a lot of those other enemy ships I do have cover against from the island, so this is fantastic. The same island that my friendly battleship is using as well. So that is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make sure that I do have those enemies blocked so they can't fire at me, but at the same time maintain my rate of fire on the enemy Yamato, right? Every little bit counts. You can see myself and I believe Tercep, sorry, and Mount Mandan are also engaging the enemy Yamato here off in the distance. So shots continue to rain in on the enemy Yamato. You can see the Yamato is almost gone. There we go. I managed to get the kill. Fantastic. We need to turn in to keep the island on the port side of the ship if I want to have any hope at all of surviving the next few minutes here, because there's quite a few enemy ships there just on the other side of this island, and the second that I give them a broadside I am going to die. I just know it. We can see the enemy Iowa there off in the distance. Now I am going to use my armor piercing as best I can here, and the reason for it is that these enemy battleships are all relatively close. My armor piercing will destroy these enemy battleships, so that's what I'm going to try and do. I was going to line up in the Iowa, but then we see the target of opportunity is the enemy Amagi there off in the distance, so I'm immediately going to start shooting in on this player and hopefully take the player down. We can see I am doing a bunch of damage. Unfortunately, Tercep just went down. That kind of sucks. I'm not sure who got him, but it was tragic. Shots go into the enemy Amagi, almost dead. A few more shots and we should be able to take the player out. We see some shots coming in from, I think that was Mount Mandan. Finishes off the enemy Amagi. Fantastic. Don't need to worry about that player. Tercep did manage to get some torpedoes though, and those torpedoes off before he died, and those torpedoes are looking good for a few hits on that enemy Iowa, so fantastic. We do get a bit of damage dealt to the Iowa, and in the meantime my allies are raining in shells. So not too bad. Moving in and around the island, right? I'm essentially doing circles behind the island because I'm trying to use the island as cover as much as I possibly can. We do see the enemy Hindenburg now in the distance in our sight, so we are going to start engaging this player. The player turns into me, and I probably should have been a little quicker to turn over onto the high explosive, but yeah, I do stick with the armor piercing. I am a sucker for the armor piercing. It is pretty great. The enemy Hindenburg takes a huge hit there from one of my ally battleships, I'm going to assume, not 100% sure though, and is on very low health. So I'm going to continue to, get into position to use the island as cover, see what torpedoes I might be able to get off at some of these enemies here as well, because a lot of these enemies, or at least some of the enemies, are relatively close to my torpedo range, and a little bit of maneuvering and I might actually be able to get them into my torpedo range. We see the enemy battleship goes down. That is fantastic. One of my allies manages to take the player out with a devastating strike, so excellent job there. And we are going to now try and open up the distance a little between ourselves and the island to see if we can't lob some shells over the island, right? We see the enemy Hindenburg there off in the distance on very low health indeed, so we're going to try maybe to finish the player off, or at least help contribute a little more. Again, my allies all over it, and they managed to finish off the player, so fantastic. We see Mount Mandan there pass behind my ship in the Khabarovsk, so excellent job. Both he and Tercep did in this battle here. Again, those maneuvers up there at A really did help us out, because it allowed the majority of our team to focus their efforts on B and let us take and hold B, which is pretty critical. We see an enemy battleship just on the other side of the island, right? That player is not really interested in coming out from behind the island. Don't really blame him. But unfortunately for the player, we do have some allies who are moving in to start dealing with this person here as well. And for myself, I'm going to try and get myself in here as well to get around the island and deal out some damage. We're going to launch some torpedoes off just in case the player does decide to go sort of in a full, I don't know if that's, I think it's a reverse that the player would be in. So yeah, maybe a full reverse. Those torpedoes might do something. And in the meantime, we're going to turn again hard starboard, and we're going to come out on the southern side of this island here. I guess it's the western side of the island is what we're going to come out on, and hopefully put a few shots into this enemy battleship. There's only 4 enemy ships remaining, but we do need to keep in mind that 2 of these enemy ships are destroyers. One of them being a Shimakaze, so it would be fairly tragic if we were to forget this and suddenly stop maneuvering around. So we're going to get ourselves out from behind the island. You can see Mountain Man Dan there is out there as well. And he's going to come in and fire some torpedoes. I should have anticipated that and maybe turned a little sooner, but whatever. We have torpedoes coming in for the enemy battleship. One hit from those torpedoes. There we go. Mountain Man Dan manages to finish the player off. We caught a quick glimpse of one of the enemy destroyers. Unfortunately, though, we do have some friendly torpedoes coming in, which is not going to be so great, but whatever. I do have my repair ability ready to go, so I will be able to repair any potential flooding damage. We see an enemy Montana off in the distance, and even at these ranges, my armor piercing is going to go into that Montana and do a bit of damage. So we do eat one friendly torpedo, but whatever. We're able to repair and heal ourselves immediately, so yeah, it's fine. Plus it was Dan, so it doesn't matter. It's fine. We're going to turn ourselves in and we're going to try to get ourselves into this last cap zone and maybe cap it. And then unfortunately Dan does go down. That kind of sucks. So I was really hoping that Dan would survive there, because Dan was sort of my eyes and ears out there against that enemy destroyer. We know at least the enemy destroyer has fired off the torpedoes, but still, I am going to turn, I'm going to circle in and behind and group up with the enemy battleship that is behind me, right? I figure that's probably the safest play, probably something that I'm going to want to do. Fired off our high explosive at the enemy Montana there off in the distance, right? It's only 2 destroyers and the Montana that is way out there, so yeah, I figure what the hell, we're going to fire high explosive. If any of those destroyers pop up, I want to be able to do maximum amount of damage and have a great chance of doing fire as well, just in case, right? Because those enemy destroyers are pretty deadly and I don't need them hanging around and ruining my day here. We've had a fairly decent battle. I mean, like I said at the beginning of the video, you know, it's not necessarily a huge, massive contribution on my behalf, but what it was and what it continues to be is an excellent effort by my team, not giving up, continuing to use good positioning and trying to win the battle, right? One of my allies manages to finish off the enemy Montana there off in the distance, so that is really, really fantastic. Now we just have these 2 enemy destroyers. I know one of the enemy destroyers here is around somewhere, right? I am spotted, but again, the Hindenburg is, spotted from a really far away, so it's not saying too much that I'm spotted, but the enemy destroyers are lurking, is basically what we know. So I'm going to try and maneuver as best as I can, sticking with my friendly Izumo. We see one enemy destroyer pop up, so we're going to try and get some shots off of this player, and then, continue to put whatever shots we can into that destroyer, hoping to land a few maybe, and even take the player out. That would be fantastic. That player, we don't have to worry too much about torpedoes. Well, never mind. Torpedoes are now incoming. So we're going to need to turn. We're going to need to avoid some of these torpedoes. We see more torpedoes coming in from a different angle. So that is the Shimakaze torpedoes, and I should have counted, because it's 2 spreads of 5. So meaning the Shimakaze still has 1 spread of torpedoes at play here. So I'm going to be able to splice the torpedoes, which is fantastic. Don't actually end up eating any. And I'm going to turn and maneuver and think, I'm thinking I'm pretty crafty right now as well. That, I managed to avoid all those torpedoes. I'm probably going to get a few hits there. No. 3rd spread from the Shimakaze comes in. I'm turning as hard as I possibly can, and I'm already turning away from the torpedoes, which is definitely not ideal. Shimakaze torpedoes come in. 1, 2, and I'm dead. Son of a bitch. Really, really hate it when this happens at the end of the battle, right? Basically the end of the battle. And I end up eating a few torpedoes and die. Not so great. But my team still has excellent possibility here of winning this game. So we're going to stick around. And we're going to see what my team can manage to do in terms of pulling victory out of this one, right? There's not too much time left on the counter as well, so maybe, we don't even necessarily need to kill the enemy destroyers. We just have to stall them from taking any more points for a few more minutes. That would be ideal. So we do see the enemy, my ally Izumo is still alive, which is great. At least the enemy destroyers didn't manage to take down the Izumo. We do still have 2 other allied ships as well. We have a cruiser and another allied battleship lurking around here, so hopefully these guys are going to be able to cap the point and finish off the battle here. That would be ideal. So we have switched over here to our allied North Carolina. taken a look at what's going on, and we are sitting in the C cap and capping it out now. So fantastic. As well, you'll notice that the Allied North Carolina is altering speed, right? The player was at a pretty low speed. We see the torpedoes coming in on the port side of the ship, and all the Allied North Carolina needs to do to avoid these torpedoes is simply sail, put it up to full speed, and you're going to avoid them all. So excellent maneuver there. One of my allies also manages to finish off the enemy destroyer, one of the enemy destroyers, so perfect. We don't need to worry about any more torpedoes coming our way from that person. Just the one enemy destroyer remaining. Not too much time left on the clock, but more importantly, we do have quite a point lead now as well, 997 points. So just a few more seconds, and there we go. Victory is ours. Fantastic. And like I said, not, any one major contribution from myself, but it was really a nice team effort here that led to the victory and some pretty great results. The Hindenburg's definitely capable of more than 89,000 damage, but still, whatever, I will take it. 329,000 credits earned, 7,000 experience as well. We can see overall, Tursip and Mountman Dan finished second and third, and then I'm down there at fourth, which is not too bad. A lot of the team as well had well over 1,000 base experience, just showing, a pretty good team effort there. In terms of what I end up walking away with, 100,000 credits isn't too bad. Again, the 7,000 experience, but I did get a bit of commander experience as well, which is always great, because this commander is a 17 point captain, I think. Who knows? Anyway, that is today's video. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Remember to hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber. Leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. And as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.